Monopolistic competition and perfect competition share a lot of similarities, a lot of the same assumptions. So remember the perfectly competitive markets. They have the three following features. First, there are many firms. Second, these firms sell identical products. And third, there's no barriers to entry to new firms entering the industry. So the first two assumptions imply a horizontal demand curve for individual firms. So that means that they're price takers. And the third, the lack of barriers to entry, implies zero long-run profit, because remember, new firms can enter if there's economic profit being made. Monopolistically competitive firms share feature 1 and 3, so there's still many firms, and there's still no barriers to entry for new firms entering the industry, but their products are not identical to their competitors. So we expect monopolistically competitive firms to have zero long-run profit, but they do not face a horizontal demand curve. Now, monopolistic competition describes the good stuff in economics, the stuff we're trying to understand, and stuff that models a world better than perfect competition. We're trying to understand how firms are able to differentiate their products, how they compete with each other to try to capture business from consumers. And that's what we're going to look at in this chapter. Earlier in the semester, I spoke about how competition can be thought of as a discovery process. It's easy to see how perfect competition has no such competition and discovery, because the products are identical. Real competition helps reveal and incentivizes firms to meet consumer preferences, and encourages firms to do so with the lowest possible price, because they're in competition against other firms. We know that what consumers want because firms experiment with different products that have different features, and consumers either accept or reject those alternative products. So it is through this process of firms experimenting with the products that they're providing to consumers that we find out what consumers really want, how to meet their demands, how to meet their needs the best way possible. Because firms need to profit to stay in business, they must abandon failing goods and shift their offering to goods that consumers actually purchase, and that they purchase at a price that's above their cost. Likewise, goods that are produced at a lower cost are able to be sold at a lower price, attracting more consumers and forcing inefficient firms to cut their costs or to leave the market entirely, which frees up those resources to be used elsewhere for products that consumers actually want. So, back in the old days, some of you may remember the A&P grocery stores. The old A&P grocery stores at one point had 40% of national market share for grocery sales. Yet in each local market, there were several smaller competing stores offering groceries. So can this be considered a competitive market when there's one store with so many locations across the country and such a large proportion of the national sales? Well, it turns out that because there's several smaller competitors in each market, that maybe they might offer the same goods at a lower price or maybe a higher price but with better service. Maybe they offer slightly different produce. There's still competition going on in the market, even though it may not appear that because of the one large dominant firm. So what's necessary for it to be competitive is low barriers to entry. Like we talked about with, because that drives down profit in the long run to zero. Because firms can jump in, that forces firms, even if there are few competitors, to act like they're facing competitors because of the threat of new competition. Monopoly profits through product differentiation. If they can effectively differentiate their products, have features that other products don't have, they can meet consumer needs in a way that other products are not able to, they have a monopoly over meeting that need. So in a small way, they end up with a monopoly, even though there's other goods that are very close to the good that they're offering. This is an incentive for them to keep innovating so that they can earn higher profits because they have that level of market power. Sometimes firms grow to near monopoly because their superior products offered at a low price. Now this is great. This is helping out consumers. Even though market power is thought of destroying competition, if they gain market power because of their superior ability to meet consumer needs, this is good for consumers, as long as they keep doing that. But it requires constant attention from firms and more innovation in order to keep ahead of their competitors. You can't sit back and rest on your laurels. You have to continue to keep watching what other firms are doing in their attempt to try to capture some market power back from you. You have to keep trying to understand consumer needs better. So companies and rivals, they can compete on many different dimensions. So first is the product design itself. The product design may be more, maybe it's easier to use, and maybe something that looks better is more aesthetically appealing to people. There's also performance and quality. So maybe it performs better or will last much longer than other products. Firms can use cost-cutting technology to provide goods even cheaper than their rivals. They can use packaging to make it look more attractive, or they can offer a better description of what the good is, so people are more likely to buy it when they see it on the shelf. There's ways that they can assure that it will be of high quality, so maybe a warranty or a money-back guarantee. And finally, by developing their brand name, firms can compete. So it's the idea of brand name capital, that when people see that firm's name, they know it's going to be a high quality good, or they know it's going to meet whatever particular need they're looking for. Or maybe there's loyalty programs that encourage people to continue shopping with that firm. Monopolistic competition is a market structure in which barriers to entry are low, and many firms compete by selling similar but not quite identical products. So the key feature here to remember is that the products that monopolistically competitive firms sell are differentiated from one another in some way. There's something about them that are different, that meets consumer needs slightly differently. So this market is going to have features of monopoly and of perfect competition. So it'll be like some sort of combination of the two, which we're going to explore. So let's look at an example. For instance, Chipotle sells burritos and competes in the burrito market against other firms selling burritos. But Chipotle's burritos are not identical to its competitors. There's some differences that make a Chipotle burrito different from a California tortilla burrito, or from, say, a Taco Bell burrito. Monopolistically competitive firms have some degree of market power, so they're able to raise prices, unlike we saw with perfectly competitive firms. However, if firms try to take advantage of their monopoly power and raise prices, they will sacrifice sales. Under perfect competition, they lose all sales, but that's not the case here because of their ability to create the narrow market power. Still, these firms face pressure to keep their prices low because at any time a competitor can offer a similar or better good. Competition is much more than just cutting prices, like we saw in the perfectly competitive market. It's actually offering better products or different products to try to meet consumer needs. So that's what we're going to explore here. So going back to the Chipotle example, Chipotle sells burritos. While other firms also sell burritos, some customers have a preference for Chipotle burritos. So if Chipotle raises its price, some, but not all of its consumers will switch to buying their burritos elsewhere. What this means is that Chipotle faces a downward sloping demand curve, which is what we show on the right. So if Chipotle raises the price of their burritos from $7 to $7.50, the quantity of burritos that consumers are going to purchase are going to decrease from 3,000 to 2,400. So as the price increases, fewer people are going to buy Chipotle burritos. Here we have a table showing the demand and the marginal revenue for Chipotle. This is the same basic table we had before for perfectly competitive firms. We have the quantity, the burritos sold per week, and the price. Now, the burritos sold per week is going to range from 0 to 11, and it's going to change based on the price. As the price increases, fewer consumers are going to want to buy Chipotle burritos. Next, we have the total revenue, which is the price times the quantity. Initially, total revenue is going to increase, and then eventually it's going to decrease. Chipotle has to lower the price in order to sell additional burritos. So as they lower their price, eventually they're going to be making less revenue. The average revenue is still the total revenue divided by the quantity, and the marginal revenue is the change in total revenue divided by the change in the quantity. Initially, marginal revenue is positive, and then eventually it's going to grow negative as the firm's total revenue decreases when they lower the price too low compared to their cost. When Chipotle reduces the price of a burrito, it sells, let's say in this example, one more burrito. So its revenue increases because of the extra sale. This is what we call the output effect on the price reduction. But its revenue also decreases. To sell another burrito, it has to reduce the price on all burritos. So if they reduce the price by 50 cents, they're going to lose 50 cents in revenue from each of those burritos that it would have sold at $7.50. So this is a price effect. So if we look at the figure on the right, this shows both the output effect and the price effect. So moving from 5 to 6 burritos, that additional quantity, you're going to gain, in this case, $7, the price of that one additional burrito you're selling. but you're also going to lose the revenue from the ones you would have sold at the higher price. And that's what the red rectangle represents, the decrease in the price from $7.50 to $7. So when a firm changes its price, we have both of these effects going on at the same time. Chipotle's marginal revenue for selling the extra burrito is going to be equal to the green area, so that gain in revenue, minus the pinkish red area. So it's going to be the output effect minus the price effect. The output effect is equal to the price, so the marginal revenue is going to be lower than the price. For any firm with a downward sloping demand curve, its marginal revenue curve must be below its demand curve. Here we have a graph on the right that shows Chipotle's demand and the marginal revenue curves for the burrito. So after the 10th burrito, this graph shows that reducing the price in order to increase sales results in revenue decreasing, or a negative marginal revenue. And that's where the marginal revenue curve dips below 0 on the y-axis. The price effect becomes larger than the output effect. Now, just like we saw with a perfectly competitive firm, a monopolistically competitive firm should not simply try to maximize its revenue. That's because each additional unit of output incurs some marginal cost. There's some cost to producing that next unit of good. Profit maximization requires producing until the marginal revenue from the last unit is just equal to the marginal cost. So that's the marginal cost equals marginal revenue that we had for perfectly competitive firms. This same rule holds for all firms that can marginally adjust their output. So, going back to Chipotle, at what level of output should they produce? So we have the same basic table that we had before, although we're now adding total cost, marginal cost, and average total cost, and then finally the profit figure. So now, when considering what level to produce, the firm should produce where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So when Chipotle produces one burrito per week, the marginal revenue is going to be $9.50, but the marginal cost is only $5. So the cost of producing an additional unit is going to be lower than the marginal revenue, the revenue from that additional unit. So they should produce more. So if we look at 2 burritos per week, the marginal revenue is $8.50, and the marginal cost is $4.50. The marginal cost is still less than the marginal revenue. So then at 3 burritos per week, marginal revenue is now $7.50, and the marginal cost is $4. See that they're getting closer, but there's still a greater marginal revenue than marginal cost. At 4 burritos per week, the marginal revenue is $6.50. The marginal cost is $5. At 5 burritos per week, the marginal revenue is $5.50, and the marginal cost is $5.50. At this point, the cost of producing another burrito is equal to the marginal revenue, or the revenue for that next burrito. Because they're equal, this is where we should produce. If you go to 6 units, the marginal revenue is $4.50, and the marginal cost is $6. Because the marginal cost is going to be greater than the marginal revenue, so it's going to cost the firm more to produce that last burrito than they'll gain in revenue from that last burrito, it doesn't make sense to produce there. So they should stop at 5 burritos per week. And if we look at the profit in the far right-hand column, the profit is the greatest at 4 units and 5 units. At 5 units, that's where the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. So that's where the firm should produce. So for a monopolistically competitive firm, their supply and demand curve is going to look a lot like the monopolist supply and demand curve, where you have the marginal cost curve that looks kind of like that check mark or Nike swoosh, the downward sloping demand curve, and the downward sloping marginal revenue curve, which is below the demand curve. So now, in this case, Chipotle or any monopolistically competitive firm is going to sell where the marginal cost equals the marginal revenue. So on the figure on the left, that's going to be a point A, where MC equals MR. Those two curves cross. Now, that's the profit maximizing quantity. Now, the demand curve is going to show the price. So for the demand curve, or to choose where to price, the profit maximizing price is going to be at that the profit maximizing quantity, so in this case 5 units, where that crosses the demand curve. So that's going to be a point B, which is directly above from point A. So in this case, the profit maximizing price will be $7.50. Now looking at the individual firm, using the supply and demand curve on the right, that includes the average total cost. So the difference between the price and the average total cost at the profit maximizing quantity of burritos is going to be the profit. So in this case, it's that green rectangle that we saw as the difference between the price and the average total cost and the number of units sold. So it's going to be just like finding the profit, the difference between the price and the average total cost for a perfectly competitive firm. So let's go through the steps to identify profit for a monopolistically competitive firm. So to identify profit, first, we use the marginal revenue equals marginal cost to identify the profit maximizing quantity. So on the figure on the right, point A, where the marginal revenue curve crosses the marginal cost curve. Then we're going to draw a vertical line at that quantity, going all the way down to the x-axis, so we know the number of units being sold. That vertical line, also we're going to draw it up to where it hits the demand curve. That's going to be at point B. That's going to be the price at which the monopolistically competitive firm is going to sell the good. Now that vertical line is also going to cross the average total cost curve. That's going to be the firm's average cost. Now the difference between the price, point B, and the average total cost is going to be the profit or the loss per unit. We take that average profit or loss per unit and multiply that by the number of units being sold. So in this case, it's going to be the price, $7.50, minus the average total cost of $6. So that's $1.50 profit per unit. We're then going to multiply that times the quantity. The quantity in this case is 5.